Well, good evening, everyone. We're prompt, if nothing else. This is Zach Lehman. I am the headmaster at the Hills School in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, and I'd like to welcome everyone tonight to our webinar about boarding schools and why boarding schools. And I'm joined by a fantastic panel of other heads of school from around the country. And so as we get started tonight, I wanted to give them each a chance to introduce themselves. We also have a representative from the Association of Boarding Schools who will introduce herself and their mission. Before we do that, just a little bit of housekeeping for the webinar. You can adjust your screen as you want to. Hopefully right now you're seeing a PowerPoint screen here that says why boarding schools, and that will be the presentation. We'll move through the slideshow during this evening. Hopefully you'll also be able to see small panels, and you can again arrange them any way you want, of the various speakers tonight. So there are 8 of us, I believe, plus the PowerPoint screen. So take a minute to adjust as you'd like. When the time comes, we'll start answering some questions from our audience. And you can enter your question by submitting it in the Q&A box. And I'll do my best to get to as many questions as we can tonight, and we'll circulate those to our various panelists. So if you want to start thinking about your question, there's plenty of time for that. We'll stick to about an hour tonight, and hopefully that will give us plenty of time to discuss. Many of you are at different points in your process here, and we hope to answer all of your questions. I'll just ask our panelists who are on, if they haven't done so already, to just mute themselves. We're hearing a little bit of background noise. I think that might be coming from our friend in California, but we'll get to him eventually. If you would just unmute yourself when you start talking, that would be great. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our panelists tonight. As I mentioned, we've got lots of schools represented. Unfortunately, if you've tuned in to hear from our good friend Sheila Culbert at Loomis, Chaffee, she is home with the flu, so she won't be joining us tonight, but we'll do our best to cover for her. So here we go. Let's start with the first panelist, and that is our good friend Rachel Stone from Canterbury. Rachel, if you would just introduce your school in a short period of time and tell us 2 or 3 things that makes your school unique.
Thanks, Zach. Rachel Stone, Canterbury School. This is my 4th year at Canterbury. I believe it's my 26th year as a boarding school educator. And I think, like all of my colleagues here tonight, we continue to draw energy and inspiration from these extraordinary communities of teenagers and colleagues. And that's really what has kept us so inspired for all of these years. Canterbury, we're a small boarding school, and we have a Catholic heritage, which in 2020 means that for a school that really places values and service to others at our center, the relevance and resonance of that for a very diverse and inclusive community of students means that families are choosing us because that idea of a moral compass and ethical leadership really matters to them in this day and age. And so I would say that is one of our differentiating factors.
Thanks, Zach. Do you want me to speak now? You were afraid that I was making too much noise before. Can I try now? I actually can't hear you now, Zach. So my name is Ben Williams. I'm the head at Cate School in Carpinteria, California, a small boarding school on the central coast of California. I've been at Cate for 22 years. We're a non-denominational school focused primarily on the liberal arts and liberal education, strong programs in all areas of endeavor. Our students come from all over the country and the world. We are committed, our motto at Cate is servons, which is French, meaning we serve, and we're focused on service in every manner, whether it's in the intellectual community, whether it's in the business community, or in the service world like education or healthcare and things of that sort. So we're a neat community. Great place to visit if you're thinking about a visit to California.
Thank you, Ben. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, Zach.
Perfect. All right, moving forward here. Let's introduce our good friend, Temba from Groton.
Good evening, folks, or good afternoon, wherever you are, or good morning. My name is Temba Makubela. This is my 7th year at Groton School, where we are located is about 40 miles west of Boston. We are a family school in the Episcopal tradition, which means we welcome all faiths and non-faiths and everybody. We emphasize diversity as a chapter in the big book of inclusion. So the book we're writing together is inclusion. And if I were to say one thing about Groton and this seminar, is the fact that, we wouldn't be here if we didn't believe in inclusion, all of us, all the schools. And we believe, all of us, that you can't be inclusive if you're not inviting. So like my colleagues have said, we invite you all to visit our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Temba. And now Peter Becker from the Gunnery.
Thanks, Zach. As you said, Peter Becker from the Gunnery. We're a school of 300 students in Washington, Connecticut, which is a small town in the country, northwestern Connecticut. And we live out really the mission of our founder, Frederick Gunn, who believed very deeply in the nature of the relationship between a student and a faculty member at a boarding school, the trust that is created between them that gives kids the confidence to take public risks. And it is really, I think, our belief and his belief that from that risk-taking is when and where students grow the most. So we have a very strong outdoor program because it's a place where lots of kids experience risk, but it takes shape in a ton of different places throughout the life of the school, whether it's junior speeches or robotics and all the kinds of things that all of our schools do. But it is really that pinpointing and recreating those moments of public risk-taking and building off the relationship between students and faculty that's kind of at the core of what we do.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Next up, it's me. Fantastic. I'm Zach Lehman, as I've introduced myself already. I'm the headmaster here at the Hill School in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. I've been here for 8 years. Hill is a medium-sized boarding school, about 525 students. We're located about an hour from Philadelphia. And I think the things that make us unique, in addition to all of the things that make Hill a great boarding school, we have a intentionally small and tight-knit community, and we focus on health and wellness. We have a fantastic STEM and engineering program that complements our deep and long-standing commitment to the liberal arts. And we have a Broadway caliber performing arts program. And so those are some of the things that really stand out for us. So we'll move on to the Hotchkiss School.
Hello, everyone. I'm Craig Bradley, head of the Hotchkiss School. It's nice to be with colleagues from around the country and participants, I hope, from all over the globe. Hotchkiss, we are a medium-sized boarding school in the northwest corner of Connecticut. We're about 85 miles north of Midtown Manhattan, in a very beautiful, naturally beautiful place. In Lakeville, we have 600 students from all over the country and all over the world. Students are drawn to Hotchkiss. I think they're drawn to the deep sense of community that is here. They find here quite a diverse and talented peer group. And our motto is our translation of our motto that you see on the screen, Moniti Meliora Sequamur. We translate that to mean guided by each other, let us seek better paths. And this goes to the heart of our sort of theory of education, if you will, that we all live together, a fully residential school in a very beautiful place, a very diverse, intentionally diverse community brought together, and we work to learn from one another. And we are guiding our students, but they are also teaching us and teaching one another. And there's quite a lot of rigor in this place academically, but there's also a lot of joy, playfulness, and just great deep satisfaction in the experience of community here. It's nice to be with you.
Thanks, Craig. Nice to have you with us. And now Katie Titus from Mercersburg.
Thanks, Zach. Mercersburg Academy is actually located about 90 miles outside of Washington, D.C. in south central Pennsylvania. We're actually nestled in the foothills of the Tuscarora Mountains, really kind of a beautiful bucolic area. We serve 435 students, ages 9 through 12, with a small handful of postgraduates as well. And, you know, I think the things that we talk about a lot, and this is rings so true for so many boarding schools, is this concept of community and inclusion. And that is a cornerstone of the work of Mercersburg Academy. I think our students work very hard to really feel as though, they're included, but they include others. And you are accepted here for who you are and encouraged to seek your best self. We are founded in a deep sense of humility, and we work to balance that individual humility with a deep collective pride for the work that we're doing with our kids. You know, and in addition, I think we're particularly proud of our commitment to access and affordability for our families, as well as a commitment, especially in this time frame and what's going on in the world around us, a real commitment to having courageous conversations and teaching our kids how to be the leaders of this complex, changing world that we're in.
Thank you, Katie. And now I'm going to ask Sheila Mitchell to share some of her thoughts. Sheila is from the Association of Boarding Schools, and then we'll get started with questions. So before Sheila starts, if you're starting to think of some questions for our panelists, either general questions or specific questions to one or more schools, please start entering those now in the Q&A. Sheila.
Thank you, Zach. And I want to extend a warm welcome to everyone, all of the families joining us this evening, from all of us at TABS, which is the Association of Boarding Schools. TABS is the largest membership association of boarding schools in the US and Canada, and we have over 200 schools, and they're located everywhere, in big cities, in rural areas, in suburbs. There's really something for everyone. And on your screen, you'll see readyformore.com, which is the website that we built designed to help prospective families really start your discovery process of why you might consider a boarding school, and then use tools that we have there for you that are interactive, where you're able to search for schools that have things that you're interested in. So we encourage you to visit readyformore.com after the webinar or tomorrow. And also for the Q&A box, if you're not familiar with the Zoom platform, if you hover your mouse below our pictures, you will then see the Q&A box, and that is where Zach is directing you to enter your questions. So in case you couldn't see that, just hover your mouse at the bottom of your screen and you should readily see the Q&A. Thanks so much for being here with us tonight.
Great, thank you, Sheila. So there you have it. We have our 7 schools and the Association of Boarding School here to answer all of your questions. Again, if you have a specific question, all you need to do is hover on the bottom of your screen and you'll see the Q&A box, and you can just go ahead and type in your question, and we will get started. So we have our first question from Erica, which Erica asks, would you describe one or more traditions or programs that involve your students in the nearby town? So why don't we start with Katie. I know Katie at Mercersburg, there's a lot of interaction with the local town. So Katie, maybe you can share some information about traditions or programs involving your neighborhood.
Great, thanks, Zach. Actually, we really pride ourselves on our relationship with Mercersburg, the town, a very small town here of about 1,500 residents. And so we work together collectively with the local community for an annual Relay for Life. And so that's our students with the local community planning and executing that event. Happens on our campus, actually. In addition, we host an event with our local elementary school every spring, and it's a really fun time where all of our students do a field day for those kids, and it's so close that they literally walk up the hill to our campus. And then in addition, right now we're in the beginning stages of looking at building a makerspace lab actually in town. That would be something that would be accessible both for our kids and for the local community. I could go on and on. There are so many opportunities for our schools to engage with the local community. Our community service work that our kids do works in tandem. And in addition, we actually have a local town newspaper, and our students do some writing for the paper. So the relationships with the town, if that's something that you're seeking, asking those really good questions about the kinds of opportunities there are off your campus are good. And there's typically boarding schools have a lot of those.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. Ben, can you share some things that happen at the Cate School with the local community? Or we've lost Ben. Craig, anything from Hotchkiss?
Yeah, well, like Katie, we are in a rural place. We're in a very, very beautiful rural place. There are great needs here. So we have our community service organization is the oldest student organization on campus, St. Luke's Society. We're involved in all sorts of things around this northwest corner and beyond, and in the world. We're also a member of the Round Square organization, which is a network of schools around the world, and we have students get involved in Round Square projects globally. But we also locally, we're quite involved in a major fundraiser for hunger, for global and local hunger, as well as we are a host institution for Special Olympics in Connecticut, and we host a major swim marathon to raise funds for Special Olympics, as well as other track meets that go on. So for people who are considering, kids who are thinking about wanting to work with less advantaged populations, that's essentially the orientation of our community service projects, whether they're local or global.
Thank you very much. And I'll just add, from the Hills School, we're in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, which is a more urban community than some of our other schools on the line today. We do a ton of different activities locally here. Obviously, there's just a normal day-to-day interaction of our students walking into town and going to a local restaurant or coffee shop or something along those lines. But we also get involved with the town deeply through community service, through internships, through we participate in local parades and other big town events. And there's a lot of natural opportunities around here, like a rail to trail along the river. And we also have some friendly competition with our local high school, both in terms of athletics and doing some other activities with them as well. So moving on to the next question. Here's a question, which is, what are the music programs like, specifically orchestra? So I'm going to turn that over to Temba at Groton. Temba, can you tell us a little bit about music at Groton, but more in general about boarding school music programs and orchestra?
Well, I've been to two. I was at Andover, where they have a beautiful orchestra program, and here at Groton we have one as well. We also have several ensembles. Our kids participate with the local kids in the district, competitions. But the one thing that has happened lately is whenever we go on trips abroad, I'll either bring the orchestra with me, and every other year is the orchestra, and then the subsequent year it's the jazz band. They go to select places so that they can play for and with other people throughout the world. So it's a very, very rich program, and music is offered as a class during the day. And right behind me, there's always music that starts off as being rather unpleasant when they are still rehearsing. And towards the end of the term, I actually enjoy it. So just being frank, it's a learning experience for the kids, but it's a wonderful program.
I'll let your orchestra teacher know that you said that it was unpleasant until they're perfectly composed.
That is the truth.
Well, education's messy sometimes. Well, I know that the Gunnery School just opened a new arts center, maybe just a couple days ago. So maybe, Peter, you can tell us a little bit about your performing arts and orchestra and music programs.
Sure, and I think just to speak generally, one of the things I've always loved about boarding schools is because we attract kids from around the country and around the world, the arts as well as athletics tends to just pull from a deeper pool than local schools typically are able to, and that has been true here. And so, as I assume happens at all of the other schools here represented tonight, we have private music instruction, so just one-on-one, and then opportunities, as Temba said, for instruction during the day. And then again, thinking about sort of the advantages of boarding school, opportunities throughout the late afternoon and early evening for students to continue to rehearse in smaller ensembles and larger orchestra settings. I appreciate the comment about our newly opened Arts and Community Center. It's a remarkable space for kids to be able to practice and perform in ways that really rival anything they're going to be able to see at the college level.
Great. Thank you, Peter. I'll move on to our next question from Casey, who asks, in the spirit of the title of the webinar, Why Boarding School? How would you contrast the boarding experience from that of the best comparable day schools? For that, I'm going to go to our friend who seems to be back with us now, Ben Williams.
Yeah, leave it to the California to have a problem with technology. I apologize for that. I'm not sure that there is any comparability because a boarding school experience is so dramatically different from a day school experience that I'm not sure that they lend themselves to an easy comparison. The way I describe it here is that if you're choosing a boarding school, you're choosing a home, which means it's the community you're going to grow up in, the town you're going to live in. It's a much more comprehensive education than, with all due respect, you might have in a day school. In a day school, you're choosing what is principally an academic experience, although obviously the arts and athletics are involved in it. But I think boarding school goes to the fundamental question of identity, of who you are. And that has much more to do with everything about you that is not simply the life of the mind, but the exercise of your citizenship, the habits of mind, the character of your contribution to any given community, the nature of your service. All of those things I think are intrinsic to a boarding school where you know each other really well and are invested heavily in the life of the community. I've run a day school, and I have to say it was a very strong day school, one of the best in the country, and it can't hold a candle to the comprehensive character of education that you can find in any boarding school.
Thanks, Ben. I'm going to ask Sheila from TABS to talk a little bit about this question too. TABS has obviously compiled a lot of information about what distinguishes boarding schools from all other kinds of schools in the world. And Sheila, if you can add a little bit to Ben's answer, that'd be great.
Thanks, Zach. I think Ben encapsulated the thought and the holistic approach of our boarding schools. There are clearly wonderful day schools. There are clearly wonderful public schools. But if you are looking for boarding, you're looking for more, which quite frankly is why our website is called Ready for More. The kids that are thriving in boarding schools are the kids who were in those terrific day schools and said, I need more leadership opportunities. I need more opportunities to grow. I want to meet people from around the world. And for all of those reasons and many more, boarding schools really solve a problem for a lot of families, but the problem isn't always a negative problem. It may just be a child who just needs to spread their wings quite a bit more than they're able to do in their current school. So that's what I would add to Ben's pretty comprehensive answer.
Great. Thank you so much. I have a question from Lovey, who asks, can you describe any specialized programs your school offers? Travel abroad, independent study, etc. Rachel, can you take that question for starters?
Sure. And just to wrap up the last question, sorry, I know we're not supposed to do this, Zach, but I do think families that are looking at boarding school, the question to ask is, what do we really want most for our children. And it's so much more beyond academics, which is exactly what Ben was talking about, and Sheila, and the independence and self-advocacy that comes with boarding school can only happen when you're at boarding school. But yes, we have travel abroad programs. Some of our programs are service oriented. Some of our programs are enrichment, cultural, language oriented. We run programs over our spring break. We've been traveling to Lourdes, to the pilgrimage at Lourdes for 25 years. We have an exchange program in Spain where our students will live with a host family for 6 weeks and then bring their host, quote unquote, sibling back with them to Canterbury. So, and again, I think this is pretty much the norm across our schools, whether again, it's to get to fluency in a language or simply experience an entirely different culture and environment. Even a school as small as Canterbury, we offer myriad programs to get our students out into the world.
Great, thank you. Temba, could you add to that a little bit? I know Groton has quite a lot of international programs and opportunities and special programs.
Actually, we call our programs now Global Education Opportunities, GEO, so that we are mindful about where we go.
Clever, Temba.
And we try and cover all continents, so we rotate between, and of course, North and South as well. So we have programs in Peru, Tanzania, South Africa. My favorite, for those who don't know I'm from South Africa, is the one in South Africa, because it's year-long, where the students in South Africa and the students at Groton participate in learning across, the seas, whether they're sharing the same book in the English class or even doing the same plays or teaching each other dances thanks to technology. And then every 2 years, there's a visit, to South Africa by our students and vice versa. We're actually expecting our students from this remote area in South Africa to come on Saturday, to Groton School. So there's a myriad. There's also, of course, the cultural exchange programs, but we focus on every continent specifically so that the question to ask ourselves is, which continent are we not going to, rather than let's go only to one particular continent. So GEO helps us along the way.
That's great. Craig, could you tell us a little bit about the farm program at Hotchkiss and the sustainability program there?
Yeah, we've been for quite some time very, very involved in thinking about sustainability and climate specifically. We're in a place that experiences a real winter. We're in the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains here. We heat the school with renewable resources. We aren't reliant on fossil fuels to heat this campus. We use wood chips that are grown from within about a 40-mile radius of the school in a biomass heating plant that we built about 10 or 11 years ago. We also grow. We have a 287-acre farm, and the students do the work on the farm, and we grow all that we grow, we consume at school. And it, depending on the season, can be 40% of the food being consumed in the dining hall is food grown on the campus by students as the farmers. And they do that in lieu of a team sport. So they're called the farm team, and they learn a lot about, they pay close attention to issues of climate and climate change, as well as just sort of practical issues of managing a farm. There's some livestock involved, chickens and pigs and beef cattle and so on, and they do a lot of good work. So it's important to us. Most of our students, I think this would be true across all of the schools represented in this gathering. Most of our students come from urban or suburban settings, and so for them, the experience of actually working the land and gaining a real appreciation about where food comes from and what the impact of climate change is on agriculture is quite an important dimension of their education at Hotchkiss.
Great. So the next question comes from Sarah, and I think this is a question that any of our panelists could answer. The question is, when do you think is the best year for students to start attending boarding school? So Cate, why don't you start, and then I'll turn to Peter from there.
Sarah, I think that's such a personal question. You know, and I really think that we advise our families and our students to really think about what is right for you. You know, some kids, it's going to be right away in 9th grade and being at our schools right from the start. Other kids may need to repeat, you know, go do a 9th grade at another place and repeat 9th grade coming to our schools. And yet other students may not be really ready for the independence of boarding school until 11th grade or a PG year. So, you know, I think the question is such a personal one. And what I know about all of our admissions offices is that we're willing to engage in that conversation with you. And none of us, you know, we're going to put your needs first. So if you have those kinds of questions, reach out to our admission staff. They can help you think through where you're at and what it is that you're looking for from this experience and whether or not you feel like you're ready. You know, I think sometimes it can be as much what I worry about. Sometimes it can be us as parents. You know, as a parent, I know how hard it would be for me to send my child away to boarding school. But what I say to our parents is, you know, while it is an incredible sacrifice of time, where you don't have the ability to sit on the front lines of your kids' experience like you would if they were staying at home with you, it is absolutely the best gift I believe we can give kids when they're ready for that experience. And I think the kids that we see who are most ready are the kids who are looking for that more. They want to be involved with the community. They really are looking forward to gaining connections with adults and peers. You know, and if they're excited about that and the programs that our schools can offer, and they really want to be part of a community where they're going to really know their teachers and they're going to come to rely on those teachers as their mentors, then boarding school is an excellent place for all of that.
Great. Peter, you want to add to that a little bit?
I will. I think I will echo everything Katie just said. It's spot on. I would add that I think more kids are ready than think are ready. And that when you arrive at school, everybody's nervous, and all of our schools are set up to welcome the new student, whether they are 9th grader, 10th grader, whether they appear really confident or they're more reticent and shy. And that probably the most important thing that you can do if you're even thinking about boarding school is to just go and visit 3 or 4 different schools, different size schools, and begin to imagine yourself there. Typically what holds people back and what holds younger students back is they have an image in their head of a place that is maybe sort of a hands-off adult community. And in fact, all of our schools are set up to be places where students and faculty are developing incredible relationships really from day one. And the student bodies, to Ben's point earlier, are these really tightly knit, ultimately really friendly places that love to welcome new kids to it and don't need you to be a fully sort of perfected human before you arrive.
We don't have many fully formed humans anywhere these days, so always a good thing to develop at our schools. Next question, and I'm going to field it because it's right up our alley, and then I'll turn it over to someone else. But Debbie asks, do any of the boarding schools offer an engineering program? I think that's one of the things that Hill is most proud of. We have a 4-year engineering program here, which is a combination of mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, coding, fabrication, and about 25% of our students elect to take engineering. We're in the process of constructing a 45,000 square foot STEM building, and our engineering labs are at the very core of that. But even with that in mind and the amount of resources that we put into that program, it's just one of our many programs, and I would imagine that all of our schools that have special programs in certain areas still require our students to take a deep and broad, have a deep and broad exposure to all subject areas. Our students still have to complete 4 years of English and 2 years of history and 3 years of lab science and modern languages and religious studies, and I'm sure I'm forgetting math and and visual arts. So we think it's really important to be able to pursue your passion. If that's engineering, great. You can do that at Hill. I'm sure you can do that at other places. But we also want to make sure that you're learning lots of different things, learning how to think critically, and having a great foundation that will set you up for whatever educational and career paths that you choose. Ben, we haven't heard from you in a little bit. Can you share whether Cate has an engineering program or STEM programs, and how that relates to other aspects of your curriculum?
Yeah, we don't have an engineering specific program. I can speak to the broad constellation of boarding schools. I know there are a lot of great schools out there that have programs focused directly on students who want to hone in on that area of endeavor. We're a place that tends to think more holistically about how we approach education. So we do have highly active math and science programs. We have a really significant computational thinking program that is applicable really in any area of endeavor, even in the liberal arts and the humanities. So we tend to approach things that way, although I would say a significant number of our graduates, despite the fact that we have that focus, tend to go to the STEM fields in college.
Well, I know that our engineering team tends to bump into the Mercersburg engineering team, most recently in Sydney, Australia last summer. So Cate, can you tell a little, we'll move on from this topic, but Cate, tell us a little bit about your engineering program there at Mercersburg.
Yeah, great. So Dr. Julie Maurer is our associate head for school life, and she herself is an engineer by training and has had a great career prior to getting involved in education. And so when she arrived at Mercersburg, immediately began to build our robotics program. And today that is one of the top programs in the world, frankly. So our kids, along with Hill, are some of the only high school kids who are competing in the international competitions of RoboCup, and in some cases competing against countries and university students. So we're really proud of our kids and their performance. The last few years at this competition, they have qualified for at least 5 years running now, and will be back again next year in France. And this past year, they came in second in one round and third in another, but they were the only team to place in 2 different competitions. So what I love about engineering and robotics is it gives the kids really an opportunity to be the ones that create the solutions for the problems that they can't anticipate. And, in these kinds of avenues and events, the kids are forced to face these hurdles and then having to evolve and work on the fly and really collaborate. And so, and I think that dovetails really well with our capstone program as well. So every one of our seniors is required to do an individual project with a focus that is a passion project for them. And a lot of our students are doing work in the robotics and engineering area.
Great, thank you. Well, we'll meet you head to head in France this summer. I may have to accompany the team, Cate, just to see how they're doing over there. Maybe.
Bring it on, Zach.
Well, great. Next question comes from Stephen, who says, the cost of boarding school is significant. How is financial aid typically determined, whether need-based, athletic, etc.? Let's go to Rachel at Canterbury. Rachel, can you talk a little bit about financial aid and how boarding schools consider financial aid?
Sure. So I think most, if not all, of our schools have a very similar application process in terms of going through admissions and touring and interviewing and writing and being reflective in terms of both what a student is looking for and how those needs may be met by individual schools. In parallel, of course, is the financial aid process, which is independent in terms of, first you have to decide if boarding school is for you and what schools resonate with you and are a good sort of cultural fit. And then you have to figure out if the financial piece will work. At Canterbury, our financial aid is need-based, and so families have to go through a pretty significant process in terms of applying for that aid. And then we have a committee that looks at the need and does our best to meet the need. We do not have separate merit or aid packages based on academics or athletics. It really is all part of the same need-based financial aid. I don't want to go into too much granular detail, but it is, I think, at all of our schools, we have teams that are very accessible to families to walk them through the process, to answer countless questions, because it is, quite frankly, very similar to the complications of applying for aid in college, and there are lots of nuances to it. And so we have teams that help families navigate the financial aid process throughout, start to finish, and then figure out how to proceed from there.
Is there any panelists that would like to talk about any other kind of financial aid, merit-based financial aid? I'm not sure if any of our schools have merit-based, but if someone does, they can speak up. There you have it. So I think Rachel's answer is pretty perfect. We definitely encourage all students to apply and not to worry about the financial piece as the first part of your consideration. And hopefully there are a variety of schools out there that can meet needs in different ways. And hopefully if it's a good match for you, one of the schools will certainly try to make it work. Next question comes from Catherine. Has anyone posed a college prep question? Is there college prep for these students? Our current school has excellent college prep. I think, Catherine, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you're talking about sort of test prep and college counseling outside of the college prep education. I think all of us view ourselves as preparatory schools for college. So maybe, Craig, could you talk about the college counseling program or college advising program at Hotchkiss and any additional sort of test prep and other prep work that your school does over and above its traditional curriculum?
Sure, thanks, Zach. Yeah, I mean, this is an important dimension of the program for us, and I suspect that's true across the board of the schools here. We see the education, the liberal arts sort of foundation we're providing to students as the really essential preparation. But the truth is, the process of applying to university in the United States is more elaborate than it is in some other countries, and we acknowledge that and prepare students and families and our own faculty, who are important participants in that, and writing letters of recommendation. We go to some great lengths to assure that students are well advised and well guided on the whole process, and that they also are prepared for the tests, the standardized tests that they need to take to apply. It's an extensive program. We have, so we'll have 175 seniors graduate this spring. We have 6 college advisors working with that group of kids. They're also working with the 11th grade kids as they begin the process, and with their families as they put lists together of schools to visit and to begin to get into focus what sort of experience they want from university, and then they get guided on the right sorts of places to be thinking about. There's quite a lot of emphasis on the students' own essay writing and writing supplements, but also their personal statements, and there's a lot of care taken with them in putting together those personal statements and reflecting again on their own education and their own life experience and what they see themselves as bringing to another highly selective educational setting at the university level. So it's an important dimension of the work that goes on here. I'd say it involves the families to a much greater degree than other aspects of the educational program. And that's really becomes quite important for students and parents to be sort of thinking about this together.
Thank you, Craig. Temba, could you add to that a little bit in terms of other aspects of college prep and college counseling?
I would just add a little bit to what Craig says. For us, we look at the college process as a journey, and we believe by starting early in 10th grade, by the time the students are ready to start on this journey, they should be on the driver's seat, and the parents should be on the back seat. And then the college counselor is driving along is a long shotgun, making sure that they're steering the process. So it is very important. There's a tension between just being schools that prepare students for college and the education that has to take place within our schools. The advantage of boarding schools is the fact that we don't just prepare the students for college, we prepare them to succeed in college, because being in college is more than just doing the academics. They have to know how to live and work with others. Actually, two select universities said to me, when they admit students from boarding schools, as you can imagine, I didn't answer the boarding school question. They put them in dorms because they know how to do the residential piece, because they've been educated. You know, one of the things that we focus on in all our schools is the fact that there are two schools in one. The school that starts, let's say, at 7 o'clock until 3:30, and the school that starts at 3:30 until 11. So throughout, the day, we're preparing the students for the real business of living in college and beyond.
Thank you, Temba. That's definitely a different dimension of college prep, so that's good to hear. I'm going to combine two questions. First from Jamie, what does a typical day look like for a student? And then from David, what are weekends like on campus? So basically, what does it look like during the school week? And then how do things change on the weekends? So let's start first with Peter, and then we'll go to Ben. So Peter, you want to start that?
Sure.
Take a typical weekday.
Typical weekday, we start with breakfast in the dining hall. The whole school fits in the dining hall. It is optional for older students, required for younger students, starting about 7 o'clock. Classes start different times, different days, but average around 8:30 or 9 o'clock start. We use some of that morning time for meeting time for adults and for kids to be able to meet one-on-one with their teachers and advisors, or sometimes AP classes grab some of that time first thing in the morning. Then, as happens at a lot of schools, our morning is, we're in 2 classes, then we take a break where we do school meeting. The entire school gathers 3 days a week in our auditorium for talks and announcements and just community time together, wishing everybody, different people, happy birthday, little celebrations like that. Go back, take another class or 2, depending on the day. Lunch 2 days a week here at the Gunnery. We meet as advising tables, so you're assigned seats. The other days, it's a cafeteria style, and students typically sit together as friend groups. And then the afternoon is 2 or 3 more classes, depending on the day, until around 3 o'clock, 4 days a week. We have Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. At many of our schools are a full day of classes, with Wednesday and Saturday being a half day of classes, with the afternoon open for co-curriculars, athletics, practices, and travel for athletic contests, and arts and other co-curriculars and community service. And then once that co-curricular time is done, typically around 5 or 6 o'clock at night, everybody gets back together for dinner in the dining hall. And then there's typically some free time between, say, 6 and 8 o'clock. And when I say that time is free, students can use it most of the time any way they want, but that's when a lot of clubs do work. That's when some bands rehearse, and a lot of extra help sessions between students and teachers, whether that's meeting in the dorm, the library. Our science labs are really busy during that period of time. And then study hall, which looks different at every school, and at our school looks different depending on what grade you're in. But different forms of study hall, whether that's in your room or everybody meeting at the library or in other communal spaces, until 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock, where we'll have some version of lights out. And by the time you're a junior or senior at a lot of schools, including ours, you're able to manage the rest of your evening as long as you stay in your dorm. And whereas younger students are required to turn off the light and go to bed. That's
What you're basically saying, Peter, is that even right now, as we approach the 8 o'clock hour, all of our campuses are teeming with activity.
It is hopping.
So the lights out is really a benefit for the heads of school, so we can finally go to sleep.
And for dorm parents in particular.
Great. Well, I'm a little tired just hearing the entire day schedule, even though I live at 24/7. Ben, tell us about weekends when we all get the downtime.
I'm tempted to say what's a weekend, but I won't do that. That would be inappropriate. Weekends, at least at Cate, we have Saturday classes every other weekend, but primarily weekends are focused on those areas of avocation that kids are most interested in, and some continuing focus on the academic or service or athletic areas that are of particular interest to them. So, for instance, this weekend coming up, we have a group going to Model UN in New York. It's a big chunk of kids. We have our jazz band is playing at a local pizza place here, which is the place to be apparently on a weekend. We got a kayaking trip going out up the coast, and we have another backpacking group who's going to go right in the backcountry nearby. We have lots of service groups that do their work. We have a water sampling group that's checking all the water supplies in the Carpinteria area. So that's what they do. I mean, of course, there are plenty of kids we had a dance last weekend. We'll probably have another one this coming up. There are kids who binge on Netflix and the kind of things that kids do. But the nice thing I think about most boarding school weekends is you've got opportunities to do things with adults that are really compelling, whether they're academic or otherwise. And you have an opportunity just to hang out and be a kid too, but you're doing it with people who know you, care about you, and who are going to make sure your weekends are full.
Great. And then Sheila, could you just round that out, sort of speaking for the Association of Boarding Schools? How do we present ourselves as a group of schools in terms of the daily schedule as well as the weekend?
Thanks, Zach. I think the best way to put that is that we love busy kids, and our kids are busy. And so sports or music or the arts are all, for the most part, required activities for our kids. And we do have junior boarding schools. So while most of our schools tonight are 9th through 12th grade, we do have schools that start as early as 4th grade. And so busy kids are happy kids. We keep kids involved. Kids are playing. They're off of their devices. They're off of their phones and really engaging. And that is the distinct difference of boarding schools.
All right. We have about 10 minutes left. So now it's time for the speed round. Sometimes heads of school tend to talk on and on and on. So I am going to challenge my colleagues on the call tonight to keep their answers to 15 seconds or less. And we're going to just go right in order, at least the order that's on my screen. So next up is Temba. Are you ready, Temba? 15 seconds for the next question. Relatively, how strong are athletic teams at boarding schools? Go.
If you were to range from 0 to 6, we are happy with 3 to 4, and occasionally we're at 1. So we like to play, but not necessarily to win. Everyone is a winner. How's that?
That was good, and less than 15 seconds. All right, Peter, you ready? I am an educational consultant, and many of my parents and clients are curious about who the head of school is and to what extent they will have access to you either when they visit campus for the first time or in the course of a school year. As a former boarding school employee, I realize how busy schools, heads of school are. Go.
I think we all recognize how important the relationship is between a family and a school. So just speaking for myself, I spend a chunk of every day meeting with families when they come to visit, including educational consultants, and a chunk of my day on the phone with families throughout the year. We know that we can't take for granted the trust they place in us and have to earn it every day.
Great. Katie, your question. If you should here we go. With the faculty performing multiple jobs, how do you support yourselves and them to avoid burnout?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I think part of it is that we love our job so much, and we draw our energy from the kids and from each other. And so I do think that it's a trying job, but when you love what you do, it can actually be quite uplifting. But we also build intentional communities within our faculty as well to make sure that we're supporting each other.
Excellent. 14 seconds on the dot. Craig, here we go from Mark. What are the school arrangements for international students during American public holidays when the international students, can't travel to the home country?
We have host families. Most students end up going home with an American friend. And we also have quite a lot of our American students will stay here depending on what's going on. They may need to stay here for some co-curricular reason. It depends on what they're doing, but we don't leave people here by themselves.
Great. Rachel, for whom, you get a trick question.
Thanks, Zach.
My pleasure. For whom is boarding school not a good fit?
Oh, I love this question. Boarding school is not a great fit if you are a student who really doesn't want to help build community, if you really are not interested in learning to take care of other people. And it doesn't mean that you're already doing it, but that part of the expectation is you will contribute, you will help build community, you will be held accountable to that, and you will grow from it.
17 seconds. That's a violation.
Close.
Let it go.
Trick question, I get the 2 seconds.
All right, I'm going to give myself a question. Are all students required to play sports? Every school has a different answer to this, but generally speaking, all of our schools do have some level of after-school requirements. At Hill, you're required to play at least one season of interscholastic sports as an underclassman, and as you become an older student, you can branch out. But usually there are many, many options in the afternoons, and we usually have 3 seasons, so you can do some combination of sports, arts, community service, theater, yearbook, and other sort of robotics types activities. 13.5 seconds. Excellent. All right. Sheila, how can parents of boarders get involved with the school in productive ways?
That is a great question. I think one of the biggest misperceptions about boarding school is that you're handing off your child. And that couldn't be further from the truth. You are parenting with this amazing community of adults. There are people like an advisor. Your child will be assigned an advisor from day one. This is not the college advising process. This is an adult who meets with your child on a weekly basis and makes sure they're okay. There are dorm parents. So families live in the dorms with students to make sure that if they need anything, they're there for them. So there's this incredible, we call it a 360-degree supportive community that knows and cares about your child. And so parents are welcome to be in touch with those folks. The student's advisor will be in touch with you. So there's many opportunities to see the play that your daughter is in or see a sporting activity that your son is participating in. And truly your involvement is wanted, it's needed, and surely your child will benefit from that. 37 seconds.
All right. Ben, this is actually a question written to you. Are you ready?
Okay.
This question is for Mr. Benjamin from Cate School. How do you convince parents from the East Coast to travel all the way to the West Coast to attend high school?
We actually don't have to do much work convincing them. One visit pretty much does the deal. So, you know, the one thing I think I think about 20% of our kids come from the East Coast. So the key for all of these schools, whether it's coming to California, which can seem like a different country, or just going around the corner, they're all different. They're all culturally distinct. Just go, just visit. That's the key.
All right, we have one more round of speed questions and then we'll wrap up. Here we go. Back to you, Temba. When applying, do students get interviewed by admissions officers or alumni, and where do the interviews take place?
All students at Groton get interviewed by admission officers. We don't have alumni interviews, and occasionally I get to say a few words to them as well.
Excellent.
They all occur in the admission office.
All right. Next question, Peter. Here it is. How do boarding schools work with students with disabilities or special needs?
That is a really important question for a family to investigate before they determine where they're going to look at schools. There are a handful of excellent boarding schools that are very intentionally designed for students with certain types of learning, diagnosed learning disabilities and other special needs. Many of our schools, probably all of our schools, do have some version of an academic support center that can support students with different types of learning needs. But this is a really key question for families to ask on the front end as they sort of determine which schools to visit.
Great. Katie, are you ready? Another big question. What are you seeing as a head of school as the next big idea that your campus is facing or addressing? From Erin.
Wow, that's a great question. I feel lucky that I got that one. You know, the next big idea, I think really what we're all trying to do is we're trying to imagine how do we prepare kids for a world that none of us can frankly predict. And at Mercersburg, we are really looking for external sources to help guide us with the kinds of skills that our kids will need. And so much of the work that our teachers are doing in the classroom are moving away from the traditional content-inspired education towards skilled focused education. And we're really thrilled about the work that our faculty are doing.
Excellent. Craig, question from Sharif. How does one know if a child will thrive in a boarding school?
I think I would say the students who my most conspicuous examples come to mind of students who thrive here, it was their idea to come to boarding school. So students who are leading this process, who are saying this is something they really want, they tend to be the ones who thrive and are come to it with this sort of openness and engagement, and they just throw themselves into it. So I would want that would be the main question for a parent to ask is, whose idea is this? And if it's the student's idea, I think you can rest assured that the student will thrive.
Rachel, this is a good question because it involves you. And I'll let Peter respond if he has to. Ready? Our son visited and interviewed for 6 schools in the Northeast, including the Gunnery and Canterbury. He raves about all of the schools, thus he will apply to all of them. In your opinion, if he is accepted to more than one of those 6 schools, what kind of criteria should our son use to guide his decision? You have 15 seconds to make your case.
That was a long question. I think we're all asked this question in admissions office, and my answer goes like this. Our academic programs are very similar. There are table stakes in terms of arts and athletics and academics. So really what you need to determine as a prospective family is culture and values. What do kids care about? What do they talk about? What is the kind of community they want to build? And that takes research and time on campus and talking with students.
Peter, do you have anything to add?
That's a great answer. Go with your gut.
Thanks, Peter.
Excellent. Okay, I guess I got to take the last question here. Hold on. What is the typical tradition inside the school? Well, you've come to the right place. The Hill School is maybe one of the most traditional schools on the planet. Whether it's our seated meals at lunch where the whole school comes together for a family style meal, our honor code, or jumping in our campus pond after graduation, immediately after graduation. The traditions at the Hill, and I'm sure at all of our schools, are fun, they're historic, they are meant to bring the community together in positive and healthy ways, and they're meant to celebrate all of the great things about our schools. So I think that's a pretty good note to end on, and I hope you've had a chance to hear a different perspective from lots of different heads, some great questions out there. It's a really exciting time for boarding schools. This is typically the last month of applications and interviews, and I know most of our admissions offices are very busy right now, interviewing students during the week, on Saturdays, and we'll look forward to seeing you at open houses and revisit days and receptions across the country and around the world. So with that in mind, I'm going to put up here on the screen, you can see the website addresses for those of you who actually go on websites these days. I hope many of you still do, and not just social media. You can find so much more information about our schools, videos, course directories, contact information, application information, financial aid information, activities, and lots of great photos and campus tours. So I hope you'll take a moment to go to our different websites. And I just want to thank all of our participants tonight, especially our panelists from our 7 schools and Sheila from TABS. You can reach out to any of us with specific questions, and we may redirect that to some of our colleagues here at our schools. But we're delighted to make this kind of webinar available for you. This is our 2nd time around, and we hope to do it again next year. So I'm sorry if I didn't get to everyone's questions. There were quite a few, a total of 43 questions tonight, and well over 100 participants. So thank you for your time. I hope you're enjoying 2020 and have a great evening. Now the heads of school have to go back to study hall and all the other things that we do every day at boarding school. So have a great night and take care.